What is going on? It's the RR Show. As always, it's me, Vince, here with you. We have got, let me see here, 6 stories, if I'm counting right. A little bit of tales from the front desk. Haven't been on that subreddit in a while. Tales from retail, a little bit of TIFU, and some petty revenge. So, gonna be doing a grab bag of stories right now. Our first story, like I said, comes from r/tales from the front desk. From Matusio Riffic. Guest wants to know if she can bring a bird cage for her husband to sleep in. Nah, you did not read that title wrong. I wish I could make this up because this is honestly the crazy thing I have ever encountered in my 5 years of working for this hotel. So I work in reservations and I get this lady calling in for one of our locations. And the first thing out of her mouth is, is the room gonna be big enough for a 12-foot bird cage? Now, it honestly didn't even register to me at first just how big she said the bird cage was. I thought she meant she was planning to bring birds, which aren't allowed at our hotel. I'm about to tell her this when she corrects me that there won't be any birds. Her husband only likes sleeping in bird cages. I was honestly baffled. I didn't know what to say. I was confident that it wouldn't be allowed since we don't allow outside furniture, but I was already having a hard time processing the amount of crazy I was just bombarded with, so I just told her to call the front desk. That's gotta be some sort of fire hazard, right? Like if there's a fire and they can't get the cage open, husband gets burned alive, it's a kink then, no shame, but just leave it at home, lady. And if it's a mental disorder thing, he just needs some serious therapy or something. My coworker suspects she might be planning to smuggle a real bird in, and we were all honestly hoping this would actually be the case with how insane this sounded. And to whoever ended up taking that call at the front desk, if you're reading this, I'm so sorry for sending her to you. Our next story is from r/tales from retail, posted by user DiligentElk688. Give me my receipt now. For context, I work in a store that sells sports, camping, outdoor, and hunting equipment. This includes hunting rifles and air rifles. I work there as a cashier. Said cashier is at the exit of this relatively large store. I have many strange stories from this store and a previous store. This is one of them. One day, I'm behind the only open register, and a 50-something man comes up, stomping into the store, straight up to my register, and without even being able to say hi, he says, "I need my receipt now," in a slightly irritated voice. Dumbfounded, I respond, "Okay, when'd you come here for the purchase, and what was it?" He responds, still slightly irritated, "I don't know when." I just kinda stared at him for a second before he continues. "Look, it should have been around a year ago-ish. My insurance company said you have it on record." Trying hard not to roll my eyes at him, I ask, "Do you have a more specific time frame? What month?" He gets slightly louder and more irritated before he says, "Look, I don't have time for this. Let me write down my info. I purchased an air rifle last year and I need the receipt." I have him write down his info before I ask one final question. That would help me locate his receipt. "Are you a member of our store?" "Yes, I am." I check his number. Of course, he isn't a member. Before I even get to tell him this, he's already on his way out the store, even angrier now for whatever reason. This guy really thinks I would manually look for his receipt from around last year with an air rifle on it among several 100,000 receipts? Keeping in mind that receipts aren't even kept in record for that far back. At least not that I, a basic cashier, would have access to. All right, let's head into the files of r/TIFU. This one's from I'm a Ragin' Cajun. TIFU. A very drunk Edgar Winter crashed, blood, sweat, and tears set. Obligatory not today, but back in the early 2000s, I was involved in an outdoor music fest here in Pensacola called Springfest as a volunteer stage manager. Basically a liaison between the festival and the artists. Usually held in May, we get the cream of the crop from Jazz Fest every year due to it being cheaper because they, the artists, were already in the region. I had the opportunity to meet and greet almost everyone I grew up listening to, and it was amazing. This one particular year on my stage Saturday night, Blood, Sweat, and Tears were my headliners. And before them, we had Edgar Winter, and before him was Rick Derringer. Earlier in the day, in my meeting with Blood, Sweat, and Tears management, I was told no one was allowed on stage except the band. No photographers, festival people, nobody. No problem. Fast forward to they finally take the stage, and by this time, old Edgar is hammered. He stumbles out of his hospitality trailer and starts heading for the stage. I'm walking behind him about 30 feet or so, and as he's heading towards the back stairs to the stage, my security guy is looking at me like, "What's up?" I nod and motion to him to let Edgar pass. I decided we're not stopping him if he wants to go on stage. LMAO, big mistake. He proceeds to walk out onto the stage and starts air guitaring and making the sounds with his mouth. Just walks up right damn near to the front of the stage and is playing his air guitar solo. The band stops playing mid-note, introduces him to the crowd, and they're all watching him like, "What?" About this time, their guitarist starts playing along with Edgar, air guitaring and making the mouth sounds. This is incredibly unbelievable. I allowed this to take place, and now look at what's happening. After what seemed like an eternity, I do what must be done. I walk out on stage, right up to Edgar and say, "Come on, buddy, let's go get another drink," and grab his arm and start walking him back off stage to the back stairs. The crowd went absolutely wild. Standing ovation, no less. I never heard anything from the manager after. Was hoping I wouldn't get run off. Our next story comes again from r/TIFU from interesting name 9026. TIFU by accidentally starting a neighborhood cat rave. So this happened last night, and I'm still mortified and slightly amused. I recently bought these motion-activated LED lights for my backyard because I thought it would be nice to have some subtle lighting. Little did I know I was about to transform my backyard into the hottest feline nightclub in town. The lights arrived yesterday, and I was waiting to set them up. They're these colorful, rotating disco ball style LEDs that I thought would make my backyard look whimsical. I didn't realize just how intense they were until I switched them on after sunset. My backyard suddenly looked like a scene out of a rave, flashing neon blues, greens, and purples bouncing off every surface. Then, out of nowhere, my neighbor's cat, Whiskers, jumped the fence and started rolling around in the flashing lights. I thought sweet, and didn't think much of it. 5 minutes later, another cat showed up, then another. Within a half hour, I counted at least 7 cats in my backyard. They were all going nuts, chasing the lights, pouncing on the shadows, and just vibing. I don't even know where half of these cats came from. I only know 3 cats in the neighborhood by name, and there were clearly some randos crashing this party. At this point, I realized I might be in trouble because the cats were making quite a bit of noise, and my neighbors have toddlers who were probably trying to sleep. So I tried to shoo them away by clapping and waving a broom. Huge mistake. The cats interpreted this as an invitation to play. One of them literally jumped onto the broom like it was some kind of toy, and another climbed onto my patio furniture to get a better view of the chaos. In a panic, I turned off the lights, hoping they'd lose interest and leave. Instead, they just sat there, staring at me, judging me. One particularly fluffy gray kitty even started meowing loudly, like it was demanding an encore. It took 2 hours for all the cats to finally leave. I had to lure the last one out with a slice of turkey. I swear I saw Whiskers looking at me through my bedroom window later, probably plotting his next visit. Another one from r/TIFU from user Blackened1. TIFU by never using my core muscles for 30 years. My balance has always been crappy. I attributed that to the fact that during puberty, I grew 1 foot taller in a single year. I figured my body never got adjusted to the new equilibrium because it happened so quickly. I never gave it any thought beyond that. So one day I was stretching before a run and moved on to the flamingo stretch, quad stretch where you stand on one leg. My wife was there and she likes to point fun at my lack of balance. It's just some lighthearted ribbing, so it's no big deal. So I was hopping on 1 foot and flailing my arms. My wife was laughing at me and she uttered those fateful words. "It's not like you're using your core at all." "Why would I use my core? I'm balancing on my leg." "Wait, what do you mean? Your balance comes from your core." "I'm not using my core, I'm using my legs." "You're not flexing your core at all?" "No, that's stupid. Why would I need my core to balance on my leg?" "Flex your core right now, just do it." So I flexed my abs and I immediately stopped, wobbling over and stood upright. Me. "Huh, that's weird." Wife. "Have you been balancing without your core this whole time?" "Yeah, I guess so. I didn't think I needed it." "How have you been balancing without your core?" "Well, badly. I didn't know I needed to do it." "You have to use your core for everything. Why wouldn't you need it to balance?" Me. "I don't really use my core all that often." "What?" So after that, I'd just be doing normal activity like carrying one of our kids in my arm, and my wife would ask me if I was using my core. So I'd start flexing my core and my kid would be easier to carry. Or she would ask me how I do something. For instance, how do I get in the car? Well, I bend my legs and just sort of fall backwards into the seat. After a few days of this, something clicked in my brain. I loved sports as a kid. I played them all the time, nearly every day. But I was always bad at them. My balance was awful and I was uncoordinated. I was a terrible swimmer. I was weak. I was so weak, in fact, that I never understood when people would say that men are so much stronger than women. My wife would overpower me when she wanted to. I'd struggle and strain and she would push me back. It was a bit humiliating, but I never let her know that. Well, it took some training, but eventually I started instinctively using my core for everything. I started using it while walking, while lifting things, even just standing in one spot. I use my core now. It's been 2 years and sometimes I can't believe the change I've seen. I'm 33 and I'm the strongest I've ever been. I can do things with ease that I used to struggle with. I'm stronger than my wife now, which is an ego boost. I beat my half marathon time by 30 minutes from 2:20 to 1:50. This summer I started lifting weights to get even stronger. I love how I feel now. My confidence is higher and I'm a happier person. I'm not sure how I never learned to use my core muscles or anything. I do wonder how strong I could have gotten in my 20s if I'd been using my body the way I'm supposed to. I don't dwell on it. I'm just glad that I was able to change my body when I did. I never would have thought that a playful jibe from my wife would have changed my life so much. Our final story in this episode comes from r/petty revenge. From user rudewelcome3269. Think I'm faking being sick? Get stuck for 2 hours. I was probably about 10 years old and had an awful history of motion sickness. Really awful motion sickness, so bad that I threw up on a paddleboard. My family was going on a vacation because my parents had gotten a ton of miles and were splurging going to England and Scotland. I'm from the US. After a couple of days in London, we took a small Ryanair flight over to Scotland for a day or two. It was terrible in a really small plane, so a lot of turbulence and other things. The whole flight, I was on the verge of throwing up and felt so awful. When the plane finally landed, it was super rough and an awful landing with a lot of stop and start on the brakes, which causes me to have really bad motion sickness. When it finally stopped, I was groaning and we were asking the flight attendant for a bag. But since it was Ryanair, they took every cost-cutting measure, which included not having barf bags. I was about to throw up. My mom then asked to cut to the front so I could throw up off the plane, which the flight attendant thought I was just trying to cut the line, which wasn't far. We were in the middle front of the plane, and the flight attendant basically just told us no and said snobbishly for me to throw up because she thought that I was faking. I held it in my throat, and when it was finally our time to go down the aisle, we were still in the top half of the plane, and the flight attendant, who was rude, was behind us. Cue the malicious compliance. I barfed down the whole aisle and all the way to the front door. It wasn't a 2-aisle plane, it was just the one in the middle. It was all over the floor, and there was no way to get to the front without stepping in the giant puddles of liquefied fish and chips. I don't think there was a back exit as it was a small plane. I could be mistaken. So everyone behind me was trapped. I think they had to call a hazmat team because of the volume. Still unsure on the finer details because my parents thought they saw one going up. But this was a really long time ago. I still remember the jaw on the floor of the flight attendant as I trapped them. I definitely feel awful for all the people behind us, and it's almost definitely a common excuse to cut the line. But, jeez, Ryanair for not giving out 1-cent bags, not letting me go past so I could throw up. This was many years ago, so there are many details that were certainly missed or forgotten. So thanks for being with us. The RR Show is a production of Evergreen Podcasts and Wessler Media. Now, if you'd be so kind, please follow or subscribe to our show wherever you get your podcasts. And if you're feeling extra nice, you might as well leave a 5-star review. But for more, visit the website, rrshow.com. That is rrshow.com. I'm your host, Vince. Thank you to my producer, Kevin, and we'll see you next time here on The RR Show.